culture? Are you creating it, or is it creating you? Consider for a moment just saying to yourself, I am the creator of my reality. However, my reality also creates me. As you consider that, I wonder where your mind goes. Does it wander into instant dismissal because the very idea of either of those things is almost as uncomfortable as the two of them combined? Or does a sort of flame within you get ignited by the gases of a long-buried curiosity? Back in 1979, I was introduced to something called the New Thought movement. Now, that's kind of a misnomer because even back in the 1970s, the New Thought was anything but new. It actually began to rise in popularity as a way of thinking at the end of the 18-somethings, After being introduced to it, over the following 10 to 15 years, I consumed the writings and the teachings of people like Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, of Ernest Holmes, Florence Scovel Shinde, Quimby, Wattles, Charles Hannell, Paramahansa Yogananda, Prentice Mumford, Emmett Fox, Khalil Gibran, Ralph Waldo Emerson, just to name a few. I mean, I consumed these teachings with this deep thirst of a man who had crossed the desert of ignorance, and with my last breath had discovered this oasis of wisdom that once I tasted it, began to collapse the entire mirage that had been my life up until that moment. I mean, lights went on where I'd only known darkness, and a sense of personal power awakened me from the coma that I didn't even know I was in. Every single one of those teachings, along with the other philosophies that I went on to study, taught me over and over again that I was not the victim of my circumstances, but rather that I was, at a conscious or an unconscious level, I was the creator of those circumstances. That my thoughts and my feelings determined my world and how I saw it. Now, initially, this was both exciting and scary to own that level of personal power, because along with embracing the power, I had to also embrace the accountability, full accountability for my life. However, it took a long time to refine my understanding of actually how that works. You see, just as previously I had perceived my life as this sort of one-way street where life would sort of come at me and I would be at the whim of the fates, with this new understanding, it appeared that it was still a one-way street, only it was this way, where I alone was the creator of my reality. But it wasn't until some significant interactions that I realized that our interplay with reality is not one way in either direction, but rather a two-way relationship. Yes, my thoughts, my feelings are creating my reality. However, there is reciprocity to this relationship that we have with life. As crazy and out there as it can seem, our world is shaped and formed by our thoughts and feelings. Now, I know you might be thinking, oh, Dov's lost it here, it's gone up. But just look around and you'll see. Everything, every building, every item, every meal, every outfit, everything that has been touched by mankind, whether it's a cup or whether it's a pen or whether even it's a tropical plant that is in your living room, that's not natural. That's not how it happened. Everything that has been touched by mankind is in some way been formed or changed by the thoughts, the feelings, and the imagination of mankind. However, despite what we may think, these things that now make up every aspect of our world are not as passive as they may seem. In fact, I'll go so far as to say they shape and form us. Just as we impact them, we are impacted by them. There is a reciprocal feedback loop. Let me give you an example of what I mean, okay? Imagine that you've been in a nightclub. Now, I know for some of you that might have been a while ago. For others of you, it might have been about half an hour ago. But imagine that you've been in a nightclub. You know that that's an environment that is designed to evoke a particular emotional, mental, even physical state. And imagine that you just walked out of there, and as you walk out, you walk maybe 100 meters, 100 yards, and you enter into a church or a cathedral. Now, whether you consider yourself to be a religious person or not, the minute you enter that environment, it's in communication with you. And the behaviors and the volume at which you are operating immediately shift and align to that environment. I put it to you that we build playgrounds not for children to play in, but rather to evoke a childlike sense of play that allows us to play in that space. We build libraries and classrooms, not to read and learn, but rather to evoke the desire to learn. We build parks to evoke calmness. We build every space that we interact with, either by original design or by adding to it. Now, here's what I mean by adding to it. Professor Rupert Sheldrake, in his book, The Presence of the Past, shared this reality-shaking idea that we and all living things exist inside morphogenetic fields. The morphogenetic fields of all those who've gone before us. That we have our presence inside these fields of the past, inside the collective knowledge of all those who've gone before us. He cites how when birds, you've seen this, when they move in formation, that it's not just because there's a leader, but rather because there's a collective of those birds that are in tune with the morphogenetic field of that species that has existed for millennia. I put it to you that every environment contains a collective field, not only of its creator, but of also all of those who entered into that environment and responded to it. We are either building or adding to the morphogenetic field of any environment. For instance, haven't you entered into a certain space and just known that something about that place that tells you, oh, it feels good, that this is right for you, it feels aligned with who you are? Of course you have. But you've also entered into spaces that felt completely opposite. It felt like you need to get out there as if your hair was on fire, and yet there's no obvious reason to do so. That, my friends, is what a corporate culture is. It's something that you as a leader design or is designed inadvertently by the collective of the group. It's easy to tell ourselves or others that it's crazy to respond to an environment with that gut level intuition. But just give yourself a moment to consider that if we go back in time, not very far, just to a time before Geiger counters, and we spend some time in a radioactive environment, it's easy to say, because there's nothing we can see, it's easy to say there's nothing there. There's no problem. The problem doesn't exist. We can even say that if somebody gets sick, it's a psychosomatic response based on whatever it is, because we don't have the equipment to measure the radioactive, the poisonous gamma waves that exist there. Looking back, actually, even looking forward, we must intelligently ask ourselves this question. Is something only real if we have the equipment to measure it? And of course the answer is no. According to the theory of quantum entanglement, we are all interconnected through a quantum field. The theory states that when two particles become linked in some way, they are always linked and bonded beyond space and time. That anything that is done to one at a quantum level is done to both. Even though those particles can be separated spatially by vast space, meaning they could be literally on the other side of the universe. So what does this mean to you, to your community, to your team, to your corporate culture? Simply put, we are all connected beyond space and time. Now, there's a vast amount of scientific research and experimentation that shows that this is particularly true with human beings. Once we have some kind of emotional connection to someone, we are always connected. Bottom line, if you want your people to become fiercely loyal, you must find a way to design and build a corporate culture that emotionally bonds your people to the organization, to each other, and to the leader. You know, it can be so exciting, even mind-blowing to realize that we are all in direct communication, in symbiotic relationship with everything around us. That as much as we create our reality, our environment, our culture, those things are also shaping and forming us in every single moment. In the context of business, your environment, and more importantly, the culture of your organization changes the people in it. But at the same time, the organization itself is changed by the people. This is why culture must be consciously designed, fed and upheld, particularly at the hiring process, so that the people you bring in are aligned with the culture first, beyond skills, beyond personality. There is great power in knowing that the spaces we create are a blank canvas for intention. That every time you enter a space, you get to drink in the intoxication of your intention. And that all those who enter that space will either be repelled away because it does not fit their personal emotional field, or they will be by default pulled into, magnetized to the spatial morphogenetic field, and it will increase the intention that you've set. There is powerful, wonderful creativity, freedom, and potential fulfillment in being the architect of any given space, whether that space is physical or whether it's a cultural space. As a leader, you, me, we are responsible and accountable for designing the space so that it communicates back to you with the intention you put it together. So that when you enter your home, when you enter your work, when you enter the environment, it feeds that intention back to you. You are building a space, a field of energy that speaks back your intention into every nerve in your body, to the chemistry of your brain. So go forth, create your families, your communities, your corporate culture. But remember, they are also creating you. My name is Dov Baron. You can find out more about me at fullmontyleadership.com. And until next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious.